Okay. Oh, video. Okay, great.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Hey, hey,
Welcome to the Flavor Expedition. I'm your co host, Dan Fallacy. Along with me, my other co host, Chef Chase Obachain. Chef, say hello.
Hello, sir. How are you? How are you? I'm very
Yeah.
excited. We have a great day, a great episode planned for all of our listeners here. You want
Yeah.
to
Well, those
introduce?
of us who are going to watch it on video are going to know this before we even say anything. But we do have a special guest, a friend of ours, a friend of the culinary world, and we just want to make sure that we do it justice and share some really kind of fun things about that. We have with us today Chef James Corwell, certified master chef. Chef James, welcome.
great to be here. Hello, you guys, and everybody else who might be watching
Yeah, and listening. So
and
yeah,
listening.
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
it's a multifunctional pod video webcast.
Multifaceted
Yes,
conversation
Yeah.
here.
Take advantage of it
Yeah,
all. So, Chef James, thank you for coming on.
my pleasure. My
You
pleasure.
absolutely.
you're super busy. We just heard in the
Yeah,
pre talk that your arms must be tired because you just landed in from Alaska last night.
yeah. That's a flight. I tell you what. Living in Atlanta, Georgia, going all the way to
Wow.
Anchorage, Alaska. That's not an easy flight. Um, Bit of a red eye, but it was there for a fundraiser for the YMCA up there, and they do a lot of outreach, community work with the armed services. And
Okay.
so, whether it's relocation or reintegration or therapy, you name it, housing, they do it all. So, good time had by all. We had their annual fundraiser for 500 people and
Right.
featuring local Alaskan products. And the governor was there, the senators were there, a bunch of four-star generals were there,
Oh
and
wow.
raised a ton of money. And it's good to be able to give back.
Yeah, that's
I
really
imagine
awesome.
you had some pretty good food while you're up there too.
Oh my gosh! I mean, the salmon's amazing.
Sure.
The venison was top
Ooh,
notch. I
sure.
hear made our own raviolis and gnocco and yeah, it's just lots of great food, great desserts.
Were
You know,
you cooking chef or were you there as something other?
no. I still got to cook. It wouldn't be fair. Um, but no, the Marriott we cooked out just rolled out the red carpet and gave us their staff and made it very enjoyable, very
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 enjoyable.
cool.
So yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah. So outside of we have a bit of a pattern we like to follow on the show, and it's usually
sure.
past, present, and future, right? So it kind of
Oh,
goes
good.
to flow. So sticking to that to some degree, without going into your full resume, you've got obviously some beautiful properties you've worked at, and I guess what I'm thinking of is more the inspiration to not only get your CMC, like
Yeah,
what led you in that process, because I think it's a really it's the top honor, right? I mean, you
yeah,
work really hard for it, but there's a lot of steps in between that,
yeah,
and
Sure.
I'd love to kind of hear your what brought you to
Yeah.
that
What got
point.
you here
yeah,
today?
yeah, yeah. No, it's a good question. And I'm sure every single CMC would give you a different story.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it was always rooted in history. You know, haute cuisine, grand cuisine has always been the cuisine for the kings and the queens and the
Hmm.
aristocracy of the world, and I always found that very fascinating and very rarefied. Um, you know, not to mention when I got into cooking, it fit me. I love the fact that you could eat steak and lobster every night, and all of the waitresses were in college. Sorry, but
That doesn't hurt
uh,
none.
no, it didn't hurt. But and I always thought cooks had it made,
Yeah.
and so I worked hard. I was never really scared of fire, or loved working with knives, and
Hmm.
being a craftsman always appealed to me. But going back to the the history of cooking really appealed to me. The grand buffets and the grand displays and the charcuterie, working with caviar and foie gras and truffles and foods from around the world, and in those aspects, in the Escoffier mind of things. So that always appealed to me, and so I was lucky enough to work with other chefs and mentors who had the same outlook and who were also CMCs, also associated with the Culinary Institute of America.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, right? And work in places, and I recommend this to people, where the world comes to you. There's two ways of mastering culinary, and probably the best way is going out to France and Italy and Russia and all of these places, and learn the cuisine firsthand. But if not, work in a place where the world comes to you. And so at a very early age, I was able to do that with Mark Erickson, who at the time was the executive chef at the Cherokee Town Club, but who's now the vice president of the Culinary Institute of America. I was able to work with him for going on 12 years and passed up all of these other prestigious positions just to kind of stay with him and really learn the craft from the bottom up. And so it was always from that perspective, going into the certified master chef examination seemed the next logical thing to do. And let's face it, well, as a master, there's no way on earth to ever know everything there is about cooking.
Sure.
But this test really is a test of your cooking skills as it applies to nutritional cuisine, as it applies to classical cuisine, as it applies to your interpretation of American cuisine. So when you look at the test like that, then yeah, this sounds like something that's achievable. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I was able to take it when it was still 10 days long, where now it's only 8 days.
Badge of honor, right, Chef?
Badge of honor, exactly. And for those of you who may not know, you spent 9 grueling days getting 50% of your score, only to walk into the 10th day twice as hard as the previous 9 days to get the last 50% of your score. And so yeah, if you fail it the first time, and you're invited back to take it again. But if you fail it the second time, the chef politely whispers in your ear, "Chef, thank you, but don't try again."
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So anyway, it's a thing. But Dan, I want to see you at the test one of these days soon.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
It's I don't know if I'm ready for CMC to be quite frank with you, but yeah, it's funny the whole certification process. I think some chefs get it right away what the value it is, and a lot of chefs miss the opportunity to see where it can take you. And I'll admittedly say, after attending culinary school, I'm a JW grad. You guys are CIA. It was something that I didn't see immediately as a need to pursue. And as I'm, getting older and realizing, what if things would have been different? I wonder what would have been different if I had gone after that, right? Not regretting what I do, because I feel very fortunate to be in a position and do what I've done. Thank you.
Yeah.
But with that being said, imagine what it could have been, right? So I think there's some value to to getting that message out to others and taking it
You
through.
know, it's astonishing how so many candidates go in and they don't know how to work with whole cuts of meat.
Sure.
We come, Dan, you and I come from eras that, whole cuts of meat were available.
Yeah.
The labor wasn't as expensive as it is now. Product wasn't as expensive then as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up through the ranks, you and I, we had greater training than I think most people have access to today.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of restaurants have taken it to a direction of cost factors and realizing buying selected cuts that are already done. There's a lot of value in labor savings, right? There's a lot of different reasons
Absolutely.
for making those calls.
Yeah.
But I want to just step back on your comment around history for a quick moment because it was the dining experience of the royal to eat in large platters and buffets, right? That was the thing, and that's how it was served. And then there was always you talked about cuts, large cuts, primal cuts. You just went to Alaska and observed beautiful salmon and bison or elk. I forgot what elk,
moose,
bear,
you name it.
It was on the platter, and that puts I wouldn't say a red flag, but it puts a thought in my head is like, oh, okay, I envision Chef James always as the chef of plant-based foods to some degree, right? We adopted absolutely. A lot of that.
It's my moniker.
Yeah. Can you share like where those two worlds sit with each other for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Obviously, I still have a passion for all things culinary, but having been in the business now over 40 years, I've, like the rest of us, seen the world change. The culinary world has changed. I mean, a chicken has grown in 28 days now, from start to finish. Farm-raised salmon is more ubiquitous now than it has ever been, and you start looking at some of these little factoids that start peeling back the onion. In 2018, 1 billion farm-raised salmon were destroyed because of flesh-eating lice. There's no regulation of farm-raised fish. We can't catch enough wild fish. This California just canceled their second year in a row of their wild salmon fishing. We went through from Dungeness crab of having a population of 8 billion, couldn't find but 1 billion last year. They think they all might have migrated or died up further north to get to colder water. But the world is changing, is my point. And what really pissed me off was to see tuna on every single menu. It didn't matter where I was, what I was. A wild animal is on everybody's menu, and it didn't matter if I was in Japan or in Illinois. Tuna was on every damn menu.
Yeah.
So there's a schism. The world before the Industrial Revolution, or Grand Cuisine, was just that for the kings and queens of the world. And since the Industrial Revolution, it has opened up to everybody. Fair and great. It's been great. It's been great for the industry. It's been great for any number of chefs, including myself. But we're also suffering on top of that. And we have lifestyle diseases. We've got cancer. We've got obesity. We've got cardiovascular disease. We've got depression. All of these things are directly affected to diet. And we're growing animals at such a rate that we can't keep up, for one, a good health, and two, with population. And so therein lies the rub. So what is the future of culinary, and what is the future of culinarians? And again, before the Industrial Revolution, we're now in this area of consuming more animal protein than humans have ever consumed in their entire history. And so once we follow that arc, we start to close the circle, because as chefs, I think we have a moral obligation to feed everybody.
Yeah.
And once we start to look at, right now, the Earth has 8 billion people on it. By 2030, it'll have 9 billion. 2050, 10 billion. 80 years from now, we'll have 12 billion people. And so the only way to really feed that is to be super efficient in our natural resources, or eventually our national treasures: water, air, farmable land, and how do we get the most out of it? And when you start to look at our culinary landscape that way, plant-based makes a lot of sense. And so that's my message, and that's what I try and espouse. Yes, if you can afford it, great. But when it comes to efficiencies and cost efficiencies, health efficiencies, plant-based is where it's at.
Yeah.
So earlier, Dan spoke a bit about the fact that we like to operate a little bit in past, present, future. And I mean, I think you just made a fantastic point when it comes to, the future of food being really on a basis of sustainability and responsible use of different ingredients and products. As culinarians and as chefs, I think we obviously have a lot of responsibility in that arena. But, to you, is there anything, that chefs can do to lead that charge? I think of organizations like the Chef's Manifesto.
Yeah, it comes down to farming. I mean, educating your clientele. I mean, getting away from insecticides and pesticides. Those things that are killing the insects get in your stomach too, and they kill your gut health as well.
Yeah.
Your microbiome, and good food. And what it does is it kills the natural biome in the earth. And so we have all of this dead soil that we're continually putting more and more fertilizer on top of to grow vegetables that are less and less healthy. And so really getting back to organics is really part of that manifesto. Getting back to smaller amounts of meat. We've grown up thinking we need all this protein. We really don't, guys. We really didn't evolve that way. Again, going back in history, you look at the oldest cultures on the planet, the Latin American pre-Columbian culture, the Hindu culture, the Chinese cultures, all grew to populations of hundreds of thousands and millions of people successfully over tens of thousands of years in areas that there was never enough animal protein to sustain them. So, and how did they do this? And they did this with limited amounts of animal protein, sure, but also a majority amount of plant-based protein.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of grains, right?
Grains, legumes,
combined
succotash. There's actual protein in just about every vegetable, and in eating a variety of vegetables, you get these complete proteins.
Yeah, I saw a number recently. United States consumes something. I want to say the number was at least 30 to 40% more protein than any other nation.
Country.
Yeah.
And as other countries become more wealthier, they want to eat like Americans do. So their consumption of meat protein is getting up there. Fish, which has been my primary focus, fish consumption is being consumed twice the rate of human growth.
Wow.
Fish consumption. Wow. China consumes in 2 weeks the amount of fish that all of the United States consumes in a whole year.
Wow.
So, the, the, the way our oceans are going
Yeah.
by 2050, and this is reported on by the New York Times, National Geographic, that fishing will become commercially extinct by 2050. And so it's going to become very expensive what's left. And
Sure.
what does that mean for people?
Yeah. Yeah, it leads me to think about some of the innovations. You were certainly a forefront leader in, with Ocean Hugger, right, and
Yeah,
taking the
yeah,
tomato into a sushi like product.
yeah, yeah.
So I know you're a fan of these types of things. Uh, how about the more science forward approaches where they're inoculating and growing fish in a petri jar kind of thing?
Yeah, I think in our culinary landscape, our is changing a lot. So think of the energy landscape of the 1970s, where it was all like coal, gas, based, and now it's changed to wind, solar, biofuel, electric. Same for our culinary landscape. I think there's a place for it. What we
Mm-hmm.
call cell agriculture. Um, it will probably become our commodity meats. We won't be able to water. Water is so important to us. Is so important to us. Only 0.8% of all the water on the planet is drinkable, and
Hmm.
it's still exposed to pollution.
Mm-hmm.
So, we will have to make really tough choices on water usage. And we can't continue to spend over 1,000 gallons of water to bring a pound of beef to market. So these
Yeah.
cell ag solutions use a lot less water, and they'll become more McDonald's hamburgers, all of that stuff.
Sure.
And what I like to reference is this kind of new food pyramid of the future, where the real stuff is at the very top of the pyramid, but also very expensive, which consequently only the very wealthy will be able to afford, much like the kings and queens. In the middle will become this kind of petri dish lab grown, and
Mm-hmm.
but at the bottom, the strongest foundation of the pyramid, most affordable and consequently probably the healthiest, will be plant based.
Hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a change in things. It's almost relatable to things like lobster, which were at one point we've talked about this in the past, where it
Yeah.
was tilled and thrown into fields for nutrients, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden it was like, oh no, this is an elevated food item, and now it's difficult to find lobster, right? It's harder
Yeah.
to
yes,
harvest lobster, and so
yes,
where do we go for that, and how do we find that type of thing? But it's
Yeah.
kind of flip flopped, right? It's these plant based, these other things that were considered super junky are elevated and now become the hip thing to do.
exactly, exactly. I mean, calamari, can you believe it? There's a shortage in calamari.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
Chase and I were in Providence with
Uh,
ICCA, and
yeah,
we did a really cool event there. We learned that a large portion, a greater portion of the calamari is exported than actually stays in the Northeast U.S.
I
Hmm.
believe it. I
Yeah.
believe it. And that's predicated to the growth of China. Look, there's nothing against China or any of us, but as populations grow, it's a government's responsibility to take care of its people. And so, natural resources bound within and around a country are
Mhm.
going to become more and more precious. And then we'll have to ask these other hard questions. Do we keep these national treasures within our own country for our own people, or do we sell them to the highest bidder?
Good question.
Yeah,
Very good question. Yeah, it does certainly
Capitalism at
feel
its
like
best.
it does certainly feel like that is just sort of the way of life, though, right? In times of scarcity, there's always new innovations that come in and supplant those things that are becoming more and more scarce. And
there
it's
are solutions. Yes, there
Yeah.
are
yeah,
solutions, and plant-based is a great solution. Regenerative farming is a great solution. Um, and I think combined, and even in regenerative farming, you need animals to to stomp on the earth, to pee on the ground,
Yeah.
and to rotate the crops through and rotate the animals through.
Yeah.
But they play an important role. But unfortunately, if we lose our crops, that would displace. If you ever get a chance to see the movie, Woody Harrelson narrates it. It's called "Kiss the Ground." It's all about regenerative farming, and they espouse that if we do lose our ground, it'll displace 1 billion people. Okay, there's a
Okay.
billion people displaced.
Wow.
If we also there's 1 billion people that by 2050 will need to derive their major protein source from the ocean. Okay, so if there's no more fish in the ocean, you have 2 billion people looking to go somewhere to find food. You think immigration is bad now?
Right.
So we need to look at how we feed people, and the technologies are out there to create enough plant-based protein
Mhm.
that we can feed everybody and prevent these disasters from happening.
Sure. Yeah, it reminds you a lot of Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't want to
Yeah.
go into another dust bowl on a global level.
That's right. Yeah.
I was thinking of Waterworld with Kevin Costner. There was
Fair enough.
all these different
Fair enough.
apocalyptic
Different ways
movies.
to look at it. Sure.
But how do they feed themselves in those movies? That's besides the catering table that shows up on a raft, right? So
Yeah, yeah. But the good thing is that we are doing the right things, and if everybody understood, it's hard for chefs to look outside of the four walls of their kitchen,
yeah,
and it's conversations like this that really are educational and really informative, and it helps the everyday chef just to get a sense of, well, why is plant-based important?
yeah.
Why do we need to care about this stuff?
Yeah, it does pause a question for me. And back to Chase comment around what can an individual chef, owner, operator, what can they do to change this? And I'm going to just kind of answer that and then leave it up for your interpretation.
Yeah.
I've been involved with a lot of plant-based companies myself, and I've had an opportunity to innovate and ideate and create applications and usages. I believe their biggest issue in the larger picture that you're talking about is their manufacturing process, right? So it still takes a lot of water, and it still takes a lot of farming and a lot of things that are not being done properly to create these plant-based foods. And then they've created these plant-based foods, and they've saturated the market with burgers and chicken tenders, and they're okay. Vegan is a loud voice with a very small percentage of people, and the majority of people are like, well, why do I live in America? I got plenty of cattle. I'm going to eat me a burger, right?
Exactly.
So then what do you as a chef serve? Well, I'm going to serve ground hamburger and give a patty, right? So one of the things I've seen, and this is where it changes. So where I'd like to your thoughts is I've heard a lot of manufacturing chefs and operational on national chain level chefs that have said, you know what, we appreciate what's been going on with that, but we don't necessarily want to be that kind of plant-based foods. We want to be able to figure out how to serve more plant forward rather than plant-based. And
Sure.
and so maybe you have some thoughts on how chefs might be able to do that in a operation, not on a national level, because that's challenging for everyone. But
it is, and I'm sympathetic. I mean, America is so different than Europe, and so different than anywhere else. I think economics will begin to drive a lot of this. So if you're looking for maybe it's not today, but it may be next year or the year after, and you're dealing with, do I really have to sell this burger for $20? You might look at blending the burger with some mushroom or some other type of ingredient to kind of cut the cost. Or you might that might open up a window for a house-made veggie burger at that point. But economics will drive a lot of this, and so will customized diets. The customized diet has been a major force in kitchens, as we well know. It's like, damn it, I don't want to have to change the menu for this person. They're asking me to, right? That's not going away. And I think in the coming generations, my kids' generation, they're going to be much more sensitive to wanting to eat plant-based than animal.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dyed-in-the-wool meat eaters. Let's face it. People from our generation, but the people behind us are less so. And I think with each succession, we'll have a little less connection to the amounts of meat that we've grown up with currently, and that change will kind of happen organically.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a cultural and philosophical shift that's just kind of necessary, right? I mean, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I feel like it's maybe something that I talk about pretty incessantly, but there's so much love and respect taken to, especially by chefs, a whole piece of meat, right? There's inherent value to it in your kitchen. And then, of course, that value translates into chefs focusing so heavily on making sure that that piece of meat is cared for and presented in a way to the customers that it's the most delicious thing on the plate. And
it's a treasure, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And vegetables and grains and legumes, you name it, fruit have the ability to be just as equally delicious, but so much of our work as chefs is kind of done to highlight proteins, and a lot of that care kind of goes to the wayside when it comes to just caring for these other ingredients that have the ability to be center of the plate or more delicious and really drive value to a customer.
Well, and bring it back to the master chef ilk. God forbid you treat one ingredient as less of a treasure than the other ingredient, because they will peg you on that every time. But you're right. How well you craft an artichoke or your potato or your starch on the plate is just as important as to how well you craft the protein as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the perfect example that always comes to mind for me is, you go to a steakhouse and you get this beautiful steak, and then you just get steamed vegetables on the side sometimes. Just rice. It's like, you put all this love and care into this beautiful piece of meat. Why can't you just put a little extra love and care into these sides?
Give me some Parmesan or some Palms Lyonnaise and asparagus and hollandaise. And
we'll dress it up. Yeah. So if we can, I'm going to go back, and I'm curious where you have been able to focus your attention. You've got a lot of things still active, right? Ocean Huggers is
Ocean Hugger still kicking. It's become part of another vegan company. They make frozen sushi. So sushi is so popular. But think about how you can remove the concerns of eating raw fish from a chef perspective or from a consumer perspective.
Yeah.
And they're just going gangbusters right now. So I'm looking good things out of that company. Right now, I'm doing a lot of manufacturing in Germany. The EU is it's probably 5 years ahead in their plant-based desires than the U.S. is.
Yeah, tell me why you believe that is, because I've always had that perception as well. I see other chefs that kind of travel back and forth, and they take some pretty Chef Klaus Pedersen, for example, right? he was working, native over in I want to say Norway. And then he came over here to the States, and he was with Sonic and Pizza Hut and Panera. Yes.
Okay.
Then and jumped back in between that. He jumped over to a plant-based burger stand, right? But as I followed him on social media, and I've had some fun conversations with him over the years, I always got that feeling like Europe is way, way more into this than we are. Why is that happening?
They have a deeper, richer food culture that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they have a deeper connection, I think, to farming and keeping it pure. So non-GMO is very important to them. Codifying in law that these items must be made this way each and every time. Unlike America, where our food culture goes back, to 1950? After World War II, we get a lot of it for not a lot of money. I think that's part of it. I think the other part is that they have had to deal with, in their history, World War I, World War II. They've had, Chernobyl. They've had, right now they've got the Ukrainian war go on.
Yeah.
And so much of their land has affected them emotionally, but also physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and this is just me, I think they just see a greater need for health and wellness. And I think those are very large drivers of diet. And I think they see food as medicine more so than we do here. And when you cease to treat food as medicine, you tend to get something less medicinal, and so you hear food is poison. So it's sad, but true.
Yeah. So have you observed the European chef, single operating restaurant chefs, having more access to cleaner or less, more organic, cleaner. Right? Cleaner options.
Definitely more organic, definitely cleaner. But it's seamless. You don't see it. Like the flour is unbleached, or it's naturally bleached. It's not bromated. It's if you were to do that there, they'd throw you in jail for 10 years, kind of thing.
Sure.
Because it's by law that it not be that way.
Sure.
So it's the wheat and the hops must be grown a certain way because of the purity laws of the beer.
Purity Acts, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So something we can all relate to.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that, again, it's funny we talk about history, but it is the history that brings us to where we're at. And it seems that the respect for nourishment in general has become something much more prevalent in their mindset and embedded into their cultural perspective of eating in general. I'm a big fan of watching World War II movies, and you always see the rations, right? I've never been rationed,
right?
So.
Yeah, and we've never had a war on our ground, and yet they've been ravaged by it. I always eat European cheeses because they don't put antibiotics in the cows.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is cheese but a concentration of milk? And so you have to be wary of, if you don't want to consume a lot of antibiotic, stick with some European cheeses.
That's a very interesting point, though, in regards to, war and times of hardship naturally making people come back to understanding of nourishment. I mean, I've talked to, for instance, my grandma about what it was like during World War II. And, she always talks about the fact that they had to have a big garden in their backyard, and they all ate out of the garden. right? And it's this natural thing where if you're going through hardship, you kind of recenter and think more about what you eat and maximizing that nourishment that you get.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Really interesting. Chef James, before we depart, I would love to hear your thought on the future of food. And I'm using that title because I know you're going to be presenting soon, a part of a really cool event. Can you tell us more about what's happening on March 29th?
Yeah, I get to talk a lot about the future of food, and the 29th we'll be up at Greystone up in St. Helena, California, with the Young Presidents Organization. These guys are looking for where to invest their money when it comes to the future of food. Where is food going? And the food system, as we've been talking about, is changing. The way we've been producing food, make a pound of beef, you can't just send 14 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef. So where are we going to find these efficiencies that the economics are dictating so that people have food to eat? And so they're looking at cellular agriculture, regenerative farming, definitely plant-based, and the motives behind these trends that are going to propel these new technologies, these new trends far into the future. And so for me, it's real simple. What is old is new again. We've all heard that phrase as chefs, but especially so when it comes to these older civilizations that used plant-based diets to sustain populations of millions of people over thousands of years. But these are more local, local to, Latin America or southern India or China as a whole. We're going to have to do this on a global level because the economics will demand it, for one, and then when you've used that as the framework of the future, where do you see the opportunity? And the opportunities are in these meat analogs, seafood analogs, cellular agriculture, regenerative farming, any ways that save natural resources as far as energy, water, makes maximum use of farmland. So we'll be talking about any and all of that stuff.
Right. Wow.
And then, so the panel is even better. We've got investors that have put together their own investment groups. We've got Woody Harrelson might make an appearance there to talk about Kiss the Ground, again, the documentary he put out, and a couple of other people.
Oh, very fun. That sounds like a good time. Yeah. It's really exciting to see that this torch has continued to carry. And I'll tell you, when you and I first probably met was at CIA at Coppola's theater, right? And the conversation around that was sustainability, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I was probably,
it changed the world.
I was probably the least vocal about it in the panel of chefs, because I've always talked about flavor. But you said something while you're talking about this future of food event, was the flavor of the future of flavor, or was it the flavor of, we'll have to wind the tape back in here, but you said the flavor of future, or the flavor of food, the future of flavor. It was I was going to call you up, but I didn't want to stop you. I will pull it out, but it's just, I think flavor is so important as well to understand, because there's been a lot of products that just haven't hit the mark to consumers, right?
I agree with you. These analogs, even some of the cell ag stuff. Again, that's why. But we can look at Indian cuisine, vegetarian, and is it not the most flavorful food in the world?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can do that. And we can even do that from a classical cuisine. I mean, a good sauce Robert or steak Diane can be made vegan, and it can have all of that great umami. Of course, we might be putting it over a vegetable steak or something like that.
Yeah.
But the ideas for great vegan food are in front of us.
Yeah.
We just need the technology or the will to catch up to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. So are there tickets for this event? Is it sold out? What's the update?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's sold out.
Okay.
There's
What do you mean, unfortunately? That's incredible. That's awesome.
That's great
Oh,
news.
great!
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
No, but I've got some writings coming out. I'll be sure and forward it to you. It's coming out in a French publication about the future of food, and it's a nice article, and I think listeners might be into reading that.
Yeah, we'll share it. Thank you so much. We'll have to get it
Cool.
translated. I'm the food
it's
translator. I'm not the language translator.
Yeah, not the French to English translator.
Me either. We'll run it through a Google Translate.
Yeah, awesome. Wow. Well, listen, what a ton of fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys.
Chase, any last words? And
I
be
just wanna
kind.
say- I generally try to be. I'm generally a pretty happy guy.
Yeah.
No, I just want to say thanks, Chef, for being here with us. And, it was awesome to hear about, everything that makes you tick and your thoughts on the future of food and where sustainability and where our food system is going. I think it's something that's incredibly pertinent and obviously gets more pertinent by the day to all of us. So, I mean, for anyone looking to reach out to you or hear more about what you do, is there a good way for people to find you on
Yeah,
either social
LinkedIn.
media?
LinkedIn works. I'm always on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be sure and get back to you. And I'll hang out with you guys anytime. So
You have a standing invite. You're always welcome to hang out.
let's do it again soon.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Chef.
We'll have to cook
All right,
sometime
guys.
too.
We'll talk to everyone later. And for those out there listening, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the field.
Okay.
See you in the field.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy